Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast. I'm Paola.
And I'm Danielle.
I hope you guys are all doing well, and I hope you liked our new intro. We had a lot of fun making it. We made a little spooky short. It was really cool. And right off the top, our first order of business is...
So last time we forgot to introduce our little mascots. Right here we got Scoob. My college roommate helped me pick the name for my little cat here. Got it at the 99-cent store. And then this here is Shag. So we got Shag and Scoob.
Shag and Scoob.
And this little rat.
You can't see him because it's kind of dark. Here's Shag?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Scoob's the cat.
Yeah.
And both of them had like spiders in them a while ago. So we still leave them out.
Hopefully they don't have any
No.
spiders.
Since we moved, I had to clean them out. I cleaned all they were spiders in them when they were outside, and I cleaned them out. I put them in my room, in the corner of my room.
Mm-hmm.
My room used to get a lot of spiders in it, so more spiders infested them when they were in my room already cleaned out.
So they're apparently spider magnets.
But yeah. Anyway, so that's Shag and Scoob.
Shag and Scoob, yeah.
I don't know.
That one doesn't have a name. It's just Shag.
It's just pretty.
Shag and Scoob are our mascots for the podcast here. And today we're talking about the new Conjuring movie. It's called The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, or The Conjuring 3. I've seen it called both things.
So as Paola mentioned, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, also known as The Conjuring 3, is a 2021 American supernatural horror film directed by Michael Chavez with a screenplay by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick from a story by Johnson McGoldrick and James Wan.
And as always, we want to remind you that this is not a spoiler-free review. There will be lots of spoilers all throughout our discussion, and I'm literally about to read the plot of the movie. So here is the Wikipedia plot synopsis. In 1981, demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren document the exorcism of 8-year-old David Glatzel, attended by his family, his sister Debbie, her boyfriend Arnie Johnson, and Father Gordon in the town of Brookfield, Connecticut. Desperate to save the little boy, Arnie invites the demon to enter his body instead. Ed witnesses the demon transport itself from David's body to Arnie's while suffering a heart attack brought on by the demon. Ed wakes up at the hospital and reveals that he witnessed the demon enter Arnie's body. Arnie ends up murdering his landlord, Bruno Sauls, by stabbing him 22 times under the influence of the demon. With the support of the Warrens, his case becomes the first American murder trial to claim demonic possession as a defense, resulting in an investigation into David's original possession to gather evidence. The Warrens discover that David was cursed through a witch's totem, and the curse has now been passed to Arnie. The demon was summoned by a Satan worshiper rather than possessing by its own will. They meet with Katzner, a former priest who previously dealt with the disciples of the Ram cult. He explains that an occultist had left the totem, casting a curse on the family to use the possessed person as a human sacrifice. The Warrens traveled to Danvers, Massachusetts to investigate the death of Katie Lincoln, who was also stabbed 22 times. Detectives had found a similar witch's totem at the home of Katie's friend Jessica, who was missing. Through a vision, Lorraine discovers that Jessica had stabbed Katie under demonic possession before falling off the cliff to her death, which allows detectives to recover the body. In a vision from touching Jessica's corpse, she witnesses the occultist attempting to influence Arnie to kill himself, but stops her. Lorraine warns Ed that the occultist now knows who they are. Ed is influenced into almost stabbing Lorraine, but is stopped by their assistant Drew. They find the same witch's totem in their house, left by the occultist to curse them. Drew learns from a book of Stygian witchcraft he found from Kastner's things that in order for the curse to be broken, the altar upon which the occultist summoned the demon must be destroyed. Lorraine returns to Kastner for help. Kastner warily reveals that he had a daughter named Isla, in violation of the requirement of clerical celibacy in the Catholic Church. During his research of the disciples of the Ram cult, Isla's fascination toward his work grew into an obsession, leading to her becoming a Satanist. The occultist responsible for the curse is Kastner's own daughter, which he had kept from Ed and Lorraine to protect her. Isla's curse needs 3 sacrifices. The first was Jessica, the second Arnie, and the third Ed. As Isla arrives, Kastner gives Lorraine access to the tunnels underneath the home, where she finds Isla's altar. Isla kills her father and gets Ed possessed. Arnie is possessed at the same time, close to committing suicide. Ed attempts to kill Lorraine, but she begs him to remember their love. He regains consciousness and destroys the altar, breaking the curse and saving Arnie. Free from Isla's bidding, the demon kills Isla, damning her soul after she failed to complete the curse. In the end, the cup from the altar is added to Ed and Lorraine's room of artifacts, along with the Valak painting and the Annabelle doll. Arnie is convicted of manslaughter and serves 5 years in prison, wherein he and Debbie got married. Okay, so that was the plot synopsis, pretty much all you need to know about the movie. So let's get into it. Danielle, what can you tell me about the protagonist of this movie?
Well, what can I tell you? What can I tell you? So the protagonists are Ed and Lorraine. In this movie, Ed, he suffers from a heart attack from the demon in the beginning. Causes it. I'm pretty sure that's what that implies.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the movie, he's kind of just like hobbling around. He's kind of weak. He doesn't play, like, he doesn't do as much in this movie. Lorraine's more in the spotlight of like pushing the plot forward. So I wrote down Lorraine's got some boss bitch energy.
That's true.
She uses her like clairvoyant powers to solve problems and figure out information and stuff. And then I also thought that Arnie is kind of a secondary, like, he's still kind of important. Like, the story focuses, like, from his point of view for a little bit in the beginning. So I thought he's kind of relevant.
Arnie or David?
Arnie.
Arnie, okay.
Yeah. I wrote it as Archie in my notes, like, a few times, and then I had to go through and I was like, no, yeah, it's Arnie.
It took me a while to realize what his name was. So I have pretty much the same thing, except that I considered the Warrens as, like, the main protagonists, because all of the Conjuring stories surround the Warrens, basically, because they're the ones who are at the center of the action, even though they're helping other people. So they're pretty much the central characters of the Conjuring cinematic universe, which, you know, is, like, very expansive at this point, because they've made, like, a bajillion spin-offs, but...
Yeah.
It seems like the way that they're portrayed is, like, they're very, like, good people that are just, like, really into helping people with their demonic possessions, which is nice. I think they definitely paint them in a positive light. And I noticed that in this movie, more than the past 2 Conjuring movies, not the spin-offs, like I said, this movie really delves into, like, their relationship and, like, their, like, the power of their love, for lack of a better term, because it's kind of put at the forefront a little bit. And especially also the fact that we get to see more real consequences for their, for basically putting themselves on the line every time that they go help someone with a demonic possession. Like, before, it's always, I feel like from what I remember, and I might be remembering wrong because I haven't seen the other 2 in a while, but I feel like Lorraine's always the one that kind of, like, gets hurt, or I don't know what the right term is. Traumatized, yeah. Because she ends up like pushing her abilities too far or something. But in this particular movie, like, the demon hunting stuff affects Ed in a way that it hadn't before, and in a way that's also, like, very physical too. Like, that was like a straight up heart attack, you know, like, it wasn't like, ooh, I'm scared. It was like a straight up heart attack. So I thought that was interesting. And especially to the fact that the thing that made me think of, like, how their relationship was being put in the forefront was the fact that at the end, Ed becomes possessed himself, and he almost kills Lorraine, and like she's like, think of our love, you know, like it's really painting them as like, you know, a very loving couple, which I'm sure that you know, it's like the Hollywoodization of it, I'm sure, because nobody's perfect like that. So
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting.
Especially with, like, hunting demons. I don't know what the word what you want to say. Hunting demons.
Ghost hunters?
Ghost hunters, they are, or whatever. I'm sure that they would have a lot of troubles with their marriage and stuff like that they're not showing us, or like
I think that the demons are, you know, you think that they're cheating on each other with demons?
trouble in paradise. I think in the other movie they showed something about how it was like affecting their daughter because they're like time away from her and stuff. So like I guess they show some stuff that like the problems that it causes with the family, but this one, yeah, they're trying to focus on the
on their connection itself, and how this particular demon like really attacked that. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I thought the antagonist was Isla because she's kind of the one that, you know, causes everything in the first place. Like, I think in the other movies, from what I can remember, the demon kind of comes on their own. Like, they just, like, I mean, or it's tied to a certain location or something like that. But there's never, like, there's never been a physical person to blame before, I don't think.
Yeah.
And so I thought, you know, Isla was the one that did the satanic ritual or whatever she did. And I thought it was interesting that the demon was doing their thing, obviously, because, you know, demons are going to be demons. But that there was a, you know, they had the ability to hold somebody accountable for the things that had gone wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but then she gets like fucking sucked away, so like they don't really have anyone to bring.
Well, no, true.
But they have.
But they physically like fought her.
Something to yeah.
Yeah.
So she's the daughter of the priest Kastner. Kastner. And priests are supposed to be celibate. So because he had a daughter. Oh, and the mother died. The mother of his daughter died. So he had to take care of her. And, you know, that's a big no-no for him being a priest. So he had to keep her hidden and, like, keep her, like, locked up in the house, kind of, essentially.
And, you know, one could assume, I guess.
Yeah. And he was, like, focused on studying, like, demons and satanic cults and shit like that. So, his obsession translated over to her, and I'm sure especially because she's like, you know, stuck in the house and like, oh, well, what's my dad always doing? Like, let me go look at this junk, and then she's like super like fascinated and interested in it and stuff.
Yeah.
And then she took it too far and turned evil. So.
That is interesting. It would be interesting to be able to see what that was like for Kastner and Isla, like her growing up and all of that. Maybe that's another Conjuring spinoff needs to happen.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that's true. I mean, she kind of was a product of her environment. Her dad was always working on demon stuff, so obviously especially if you. I can imagine it being the case that because he kind of had to hide her away, she might have internalized... I'm, like, way overanalyzing it, but she might have, like, internalized some of that shame and maybe, like, thought maybe that her dad wasn't proud of her, didn't like her. And so maybe she thought, if I get closer to what his work involves, then, you know, then maybe will
bond
over that when, you know, obviously it turned the other way.
I thought that her name had like some symbolism to it because Isla is island in Spanish, and I think also it said in Irish or something, or somewhere over there. I think it said it was also a root from that. But anyway, so islands are kind of like isolated, secluded, whatever, and so maybe that's like, you know,
ties into that.
Yeah, she had to be like isolated in the house, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of had kept secret and hidden.
So did the priest like have a daughter and then like not? He didn't tell anyone and he kept being a priest, right?
I think so.
Okay. That wasn't clear to me, but I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case because otherwise, why would he have to keep her secret?
Yeah, I was thinking. I wish I would have like paid closer attention to the specific wording he used. I think he just said like, oh, you know, my daughter, her mother. I don't think he said wife. Because if he said wife, I feel like he wouldn't have needed to.
Yeah, he might have just like left priesthood and then like got married and had a daughter or something.
I guess, or yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other kind of story of its own, really. But yeah, Isla is the one that kind of kickstarts all the bad stuff for everyone else. As far as the conflict goes, I think the one at the forefront is obviously that Ed and Lorraine are trying to resolve the demonic possession of Arnie, or David and then Arnie, and they're kind of both trying to, you know, figure out how it happened and then also trying to help him because he is using that as a defense, saying, you know, the devil made me do it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was the main conflict in the movie. What about you?
Yeah, I would say that it was them trying to prove that, like, I guess for start, that demonic possession is real and that it happened to Arnie, and then along the way, you know, they're trying to figure out like what happened while they're trying to gather evidence and all that, like you said, and then they get sucked into it, and now they're also targets.
Mm-hmm.
So it puts even more of a stress on like needing to resolve, you know, break the curse or whatever.
I think in all three of the Conjuring movies so far, they always become involved with the case, but it always varies, like, to which extent their, like, personal lives get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, in the past, we've seen the issue of, like, their daughter feeling, you know, kind of a little bit abandoned, and now it has more to do with, like, Ed's health and, you know, Lorraine's trauma surrounding her abilities. So I feel like they're always, it's interesting because like in reality the stories that they're like helping resolve, like that story is what drives the narrative forward, but they're always like at the center of it. So it's like an interesting dynamic as far as storytelling goes, I feel like, because you get these two characters that are like essential to every Conjuring story, because they're kind of the ones telling it. Really, I'm pretty sure that's where they got the information from, you know. So we're gonna start with what we did like about the movie. I'll say I really liked the beginning shots of the movie because I thought they had to, like, there's no way that wasn't an homage to The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Like, it was actually a little bit heavy-handed, you know? Like,
yeah.
A little bit pandery, but not, you know, but not so much that I couldn't appreciate it. I thought, like, if you're going to do a movie about possession like this, like demonic possession, and then start it with an exorcism, like, why not throw a little, you know, put some respect on The Exorcist's name, because that is a great movie. It's a classic. So
yeah,
I noticed that. I thought, you know, that's a little bit much, but also, like, I liked it. I overall, I landed on liking it.
Oh, I don't know if you had there's two other, like, things that I thought were references to other horror movies.
Go ahead.
The scene where, David, gets, like, frightened and runs into the bathroom and he goes into the shower and then, like, the blood is, like, going down and, like, he puts his hand on the thing on the shower curtain. I was like, oh, this is supposed to be, like, Psycho.
Oh, I
So-
can't believe I didn't catch that.
Oh, yeah. And, like, he was screaming. And it was like, and then it showed a shot of his feet and the blood going in the drain.
Oh, absolutely. That's definitely a Psycho reference.
I'm pretty sure it showed that. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
But I know there was the blood in the shower, and then he came out with a knife and, like, stabbed somebody. So I was like, okay. Yeah. And then later in the movie, when Ed is walking around with the sledgehammer, and he's, like, dragging it around, and his, like, facial expression, I was like, okay, that's reminding me of the Here's Johnny type of, following them through the place with something. So.
Yeah, I'm sure those were all very intentional. Good eye, because I didn't catch those. I caught the Exorcist one, because that was super obvious. But those other two were good. I did, going back to the scene where David kind of, like, hops in the shower, and he's all freaked out, and it starts, like, showering blood at him.
Yeah.
I thought that there was a really clever use of silence. I don't know if you remember, but, like, I think as the blood starts, like, pouring on him, I think there's no audio whatsoever. And I thought that was really clever because usually, like, movies tend to ramp up scenes like that. And not that they didn't ramp up to it, but usually it's like a, big wall of sound, like, oh my god, aren't you so scared? I thought it was a clever use of, like, silence in that moment. I feel like it really let the effect of the blood in the shower, like, shine even more.
There's another scene like that towards, like, the middle beginning, whatever, I guess, right when Arnie's about to kill the guy. He pushes his girlfriend out of the room, and then, like, he, like, falls on the floor, and then it, like, switches to what he's actually seeing and not what's actually happening in reality. And it shows, like, everything's all black, and then it turns into, like, a red door. And then I'm pretty sure at that point it was silent also. And then the monster thing comes chasing at him, and he stabs it because he thinks it's monster thing, but it's actually Bruno. So.
Yeah. We're kind of jumping back and forth, but going back to the beginning, I really liked how quickly we were thrown into the action of the story, because usually, like, I feel like most horror movies, and I think the other two Conjuring movies, have a formula, like, where they kind of ramp up to the action. The beginning of the movie is always exposition, and, like, here's Sally. Sally needs help from the Warrens because she's possessed, and then so on and so forth, in a way that's really gradual. But from the get-go, like, this movie starts with an exorcism already, which I really liked, because I was like, oh shoot, like, okay, we're in here now, like, this is what this particular story is about. And I thought it was cool, like, no frills, no time wasted. I really enjoyed that. And then in that same scene, I thought, the exorcism of the little kid was done pretty well. Like, obviously there was CGI, and you could tell that it was CGI, but it wasn't so much that it took me out of it. I actually thought it was pretty cool the way that they made, like, the kid's body contort. I was like, whoa, like, at that point, I wasn't even scared. I was like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's just a cool visual as far as representing an exorcism. So I thought that was really neat.
I also had written down that the body contortion was really cool. So I think that the actor for Arnie, which I think his name is Rory O'Connor, I think that he did a really good job with acting scared, and, like, it was very believable. And also acting, like, sickly, I guess, too. Like, he looked all, like, out of it and like sweaty and sickly.
I don't really have any complaints about anyone's performance. I feel like sometimes there's like one or two characters that aren't too believable. Like last time when we watched and we talked about Woman in the Window, like at the end, not to, I don't want to like recap everything, but just at the end, the kid who turns out to be the serial killer was like a little like you know.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone in this movie was like pretty good. Probably one of my favorite things about the movie is the use of the song Call Me by Blondie as like a little motif in the scene when in the scene where Arnie kills Bruno because he's possessed because the devil made him do it. They're blasting Blondie in the whatever the kennel place that they were at.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts out like from the get-go, like Arnie arrives and he's already kind of like zonked. He's already like out of it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And Bruno's like, come on, dude, like help me fix the stereo or whatever. And it starts blasting, and I feel like it adds so much chaos to the scene. And like I feel like at some points it gets louder as the action is kind of like ramping up, and I feel like it makes everything seem more distorted, if that makes sense. Like obviously this isn't the kind of song that you would hear when somebody's about to kill somebody else. So I thought that was really interesting. I feel like it accentuated the dissonance between what Arnie was seeing and what was actually happening, because he was seeing like something else, like he was seeing like a demon or whatever, or a monster coming after him, when obviously it was just Bruno.
Mm-hmm.
I also thought that it was kind of clever that it ties into the fact that Lorraine was trying to call them. She was trying to call them to like be like, hey dude, like Arnie's still possessed, and like obviously they didn't hear the phone because the song was so loud.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was probably like one of the best little nuggets in the movie, just because it just really stood out to me as like a really clever way of using like a popular song or something that isn't just like a score, like, you know, just creepy sounds, all that stuff. Because I feel like that's definitely the classic approach, and it totally works for, you know, most scenes that are dramatic like that. But I thought that was an interesting like twist on it.
So I think that the retired priest, Kastner, he was presented from the get-go as like being kind of like you're uncertain if he's suspicious or not. He's sort of, you know, he ends up being, you know, he kind of did mislead the protagonists and stuff, because he could have just told them right up, like straight up, that, you know, hey, my daughter's the evil one.
She's no
here.
good. Yeah.
So, but I thought for a second that he was like working with her, maybe.
You might be feeling that way because we like just watched The Woman in the Window, and there was like so much, you know, who's working with who, like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, especially I wrote in my notes, like something like, "Oh, Lorraine, don't go downstairs by yourself with this guy." He's like, "I want to show you something," and the room is all dark, and he's just sitting there, and the light comes on, and he's just like, this little book. I was like, "Oh hell no, get out of there."
So the only other thing I have that I also liked, I mean, I probably liked more than this, but this is what I remembered, is that I liked how there was like a little bit of a change in format as far as how this movie involved more like outside world factors. Like usually it deals more with like the possession of like a member of a certain family, and it hardly ever leaves, you know, kind of like the confines of that as far as what the consequences are, like the real world consequences. So I thought that it was cool, like it was a change of pace as far as the Conjuring stories go, because it showed like how a demonic possession could involve more than those who are directly affected by it. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, this is kind of something that you said it first when we were watching it, and I thought that it was a good point. That this movie doesn't rely a lot on jump scares. It kind of builds you up to think there's going to be one, and then there's not really one, which I think is interesting, especially when you think about some of their spin-offs, like The Nun. The Nun was like full
It was like
jump scares.
100% jump scares.
Yeah, so that was interesting. Maybe they took notes and were like, okay, maybe a little less.
Yeah, I think maybe just this particular story didn't call for them too much. Maybe because it had so many things that grounded it to reality and to like real life consequences. They were like, well, you know, the demon kind of already did its thing. At the beginning of the movie, like the demon possesses David, and then it possesses Arnie, and then Arnie kills someone. So it's kind of like, obviously, then it transfers to Ed, but I feel like that's very secondary because, I mean, you know that Ed's not gonna die. Like he's like the main character. So if they want the franchise to continue, which I think they're already making another one.
Wow.
I think I don't quote me on that, but I think I saw that online. They're, you know, anything that affects Ed is not going to be something that's permanent. So maybe they were like, oh, well, we kind of got all our demon activity at the beginning of the movie, and what else are they going to use for jump scares, you know? Because I feel like they tried to do it with that lady, with Isla, but she wasn't scary enough. Like, she was just a person, you know? She was a Satanist and into the occult, and kind of like we said already, the primary reason why anything was happening in the first place. But at the end of the day, she was just a person. So, and they did do like a few things with like the demon possessing like some bodies in the morgue and stuff like that. But I feel like it wasn't like in the other movies where it's like literally like a bunch of jump scares. I will say though that probably like my favorite one from, I honestly don't even remember the second one. I don't even know if I saw it or not.
Oh yeah, we saw it in the
Which
theater.
was that one?
The second one is the one where there's like the girls and they're like floating in the air above the bed, and the police officers come and they see like all this activity happening of like chairs moving by themselves and stuff. I remember thinking that one was like too much. Like, I don't know if that's actually what they like reported happened, like all this stuff, or if they like amped it up more because there's a movie.
Yeah.
But it seemed very like just overboard, like so much that I was just kind of like, I'm kind of like over this. Like, it's very gimmicky and like.
That's what I gathered, especially because that one to me is not very memorable, and I feel like in the three specifically like Conjuring movies, not the spin-offs, because I feel like that's something different. No, none of them so far have been able to strike the balance that the first one did. Because I think the first one is really good. The first one had like some jump scares, some like story. Very, very, to me, it was very compelling, especially in regards to like the way that they portrayed the family that was affected. I feel like it made me care more about them.
Yeah.
And also, obviously, there was like a good amount of jump scares. So I feel like these two, the next two, aren't bad per se. And I'm certainly like happy that those kinds of movies are being made still. And like, you know, they're blockbuster movies, like they're making a bunch of money. So they're good. They're good to go. It's just that, you know, within the three, I don't think either of the later two ones have been able to like replicate what the success of the first one. In my eyes, obviously, that's my opinion. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. I know we're talking about this movie, but I just wanted to bring up a little point of, we went to go see the first Conjuring at the drive-in theater back home over the summer last year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just because it was like a drive-in, we were sitting with our friends, but we were kind of ripping on the movie.
Yeah.
For the dialogue was kind of cheesy in a lot of parts, but the cinematography and the CGI and all that stuff was good.
Yeah, also, like, to me, it has that, like, watchability. It has that, like, you know, even like, the best horror movies you can pick on, you know what I mean? Like, if you find the right stuff to pick on. But the point is that you're watching it, you know? The point is that you kind of, to a certain extent, want to watch it again. I feel like it has that, like, you know, almost, like, old horror movie vibe to it. I feel like it kind of checks that box for me a little bit, and while like at the same time bringing obviously some elements of, you know, more modern filmmaking. So I think I mean, yeah, it's a good movie to watch, like, with friends, and I don't know, I really, it's not like I don't love it. It's not like my favorite horror movie by any means, but I think it definitely has that, like, you know, rewatchability and stuff like that.
I really liked the scene where towards the end where Lorraine is like crawling on the floor, but there's another of her in front of her.
Oh yeah.
And it's like she's like looking at like a funhouse mirror or something. I thought that was really cool.
I didn't get the logistics of that. Like,
I don't get what it symbolized, or like what was the point of doing it. Like, I don't know what, maybe like the witch like made her have like weird like problem with like perception or whatever you want to call it, so that she would be confused.
Yeah.
Or like disoriented. Maybe that's what was supposed to be happening, but like I don't understand why she saw that all of a sudden.
Yeah, but it did look neat.
It looked really neat.
Like, visually it was cool. So now we're gonna get into what we didn't like. And I don't have a whole lot, but, you know, I have some things. I'll elaborate. So I want to talk specifically about Bruno's character.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought about this a lot. I think a lot about things. You guys will get to know this. So at the beginning, when he was first introduced, which I think was the scene when he got killed, right? Or did they show him before?
They showed him before
briefly?
Arnie. Yeah, before Arnie left for work.
Right.
When
so
he's
then
being all like annoying, like, "Hey, come fix my shit," and like, "Oh, you gotta work for me," and the girl's like, "I'm not working for you on the weekend, dude."
Yeah. Okay, so obviously he doesn't get a lot of screen time, but this is what I gathered. As the first thing I thought when I saw him, I was like, "Oh, great! Like, how cliche." He's like obviously the douchey guy that's gonna get killed first, right? And just because of the way he was talking and like the way that they portrayed him. But then when I got to thinking about, especially, we'll discuss later about like the real story of what happened, because this is based on a true story. You know, obviously, probably not everything. I'm sure it's very embellished, but the base of the story is true. So the more I thought about it, and the more I thought about like the real life implications of what happened, the more I noticed that the movie kind of portrays him negatively, and in a way that made me think like they were trying to make it okay that he got killed.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Or they're trying to like minimize the fact that this was a real person who was a victim and who got murdered.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, I don't know how purposeful that was, and I don't want to like assume too much, but it was like, oh look, it doesn't matter because his character's annoying as hell anyway.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good point. I forgot completely that he was a real person.
Yeah.
And that he's not just an annoying character. I wonder if he has family. What, this was in 80s?
Yeah.
Something? He must have family.
Yeah.
That are alive now and are like seeing this portrayal of him, and like maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not. I mean, it probably isn't. It's probably like, exaggerated.
I'm sure like aspects of it were accurate, but overall, like the general vibe of how they present the character
is pretty shitty.
It's pretty shitty. It's like, and it's not even like he was a bad person. It's just that he was like, you know, just an annoying person or like somebody who like I don't know. It was just the way that they portrayed him was so weird to me. And I also don't know if like it could be argued that his behavior was exaggerated in Arnie's perspective because he was possessed. So like I could see that maybe like it's a little bit of a stretch, but I feel like them doing that and like showing how like annoying or how I keep saying annoying, but it's more than that. If you've seen the movie, you know what I mean. There's even an implication that he was kind of being inappropriate with Debbie, who was Arnie's girlfriend, because they're dancing and she didn't really want to dance, but then they ended up dancing anyway. So I think them doing that was more so. The conclusion that I came to was that it was more so to paint Arnie in a better light than to kind of like tarnish Bruno's name. Because it was like, look at how like, you know, this person would have never done that, you know, so they must have been possessed. So it was just something that I thought about it in like, it was just something that I thought about like after the fact, and I was like, well, that's kind of messed up. And I did I did think also like I can't imagine how like Bruno's real family feels like if they saw the movie or kind of what their opinion was, because that was, you know, they kind of gloss over the fact that he was like a real person and the fact that he was murdered. And obviously the focus of the story is not that, so I can kind of give them a little bit of wiggle room as far as that, because it wasn't like the story of, you know, Bruno, it was like the story of Arnie, so I don't know. But part of that, just to kind of like finish that point, was that I know that the movie was focused on the paranormal and like it was obviously a horror movie, so I had to get all those elements in there, but it did kind of like rub me the wrong way a little bit, like the lack of accountability as far as like Arnie having actually killed someone. Like obviously he gets convicted and all that, but there wasn't any everything was so focused so much on the demonic possession that there wasn't ever any like remorse shown on Arnie's part or any sort of like moment of accountability that would say like, hey, you shouldn't murder anyone, like even if you're possessed, like don't do that, you know. Like I thought it was a little bit weird. It wasn't like super major, but like it was just one thing that left me thinking a little bit like, wait, an actual murder was committed in this movie and all we're seeing is like
the devil.
Yeah, like the warrants off on their like long ass investigation of what happened, and it was just something that kind of I like made me think a little bit after the fact. Yeah. So to the last thing on that point was like I said, obviously everything in the movie is Hollywood eyes and it's a true story, but they kind of embellish and everything. But I do feel like at the end of the day, it is a little bit irresponsible to show someone, you know, not getting away with murder, like I said, but because he did get convicted, but like in the story, in the scope of the story that was presented to us in the movie, like Arnie never took accountability for the actual real life events that happened. So I did think that was a little bit irresponsible.
I feel like they could have totally added in like a 30-second scene of him, you know, like, I don't know, saying something like, I didn't knowingly do it, but I'm very upset that, like, by my hands this person is dead.
Yeah, something like anything that were to show like remorse for the actual thing that happened, you know. And I know it's tricky because they probably didn't want to delve into that too much. And maybe it had something to do with like Bruno's family or something like that, you know, where they didn't really want him to be involved too much, you know. But at the end of the day, like he was the victim, so it's kind of weird.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So what did you not like about it?
I think this is a point that you also have a problem with. At the end of the movie, I don't know what they were thinking. Ed was able to break the altar so easy. Where was the witch? Where was Isla?
Mm-hmm.
Like, was she on a potty break or what? Like, why didn't she stop him from smashing the altar? Like, where was she? Why was it so easy for them? If she knew that if they mess with that altar,
Mm-hmm.
everything's ruined. Everything she's been working on is going to the trash.
Yeah.
So it's like, where was she? And then she just shows up, like, a few minutes later when it's all, like, they're all, like, standing up and they're all good and they're just right there. And then she, like, comes over and she's like, oh, ooh, ooh, and then she, like, does her little and stuff. So it's like, I don't know, where was she? That's kind of lazy,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
You know what's funny? I actually don't have anything written down about that.
Oh, okay.
But I feel like that resolution, it kind of ties into what you said. Like, it was so uneventful.
Yeah.
In a way that made, like, at that point in the movie, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was already kind of bored. I was like, okay, come on, like, let's wrap this up. What's gonna happen? Like, I was just, I probably wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been for, like, the end of the movie, but at the same time, I feel like it didn't have me anymore. Like, it didn't have my attention as much anymore. So, those two things kind of go hand in hand. Like, it was a poorly executed ending, and at the same time, it was so boring that I didn't even pay attention to the poorly executed ending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I get that. I think overall, one of my other complaints was, like, the pacing of the movie was a little bit off. I feel like there were times where, like, it did become a little bit, like, tedious. I was just like, okay, like, let's get to the next thing. Especially in regards to, like, the Warrens, like, going on a little, like, scavenger hunt when they, like,
Oh, yeah.
go help those cops to, like, I don't understand why they had to introduce the story of the other two girls. Like, I guess to give some support to the fact that everything was being caused by, Satanists and whatever.
I agree that the pacing of the movie was a little bit off in some places. I think they spent too long on the two girls
Mm-hmm.
in the woods and whatever. I thought that the ending, though, I thought that one was paced pretty well with the chase in the little underground area and all that.
Yeah, I do think that that's where the pace picked up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but then it was kind of, like, not a great resolution.
Yeah, they should have had something where they showed, like, they did something to the witch and that's why she was, like, not
Mm-hmm.
there doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Like, to keep them from destroying the altar.
yeah, I guess she had so much confidence that her little, like, crap in the guy's eyes, like,
It's gonna work.
was gonna kill Lorraine.
Yeah.
But because I think she needed him to murder someone and then have him kill himself.
Right. For her thing to work or whatever.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know where she was. I guess maybe you could argue that she was trying to be at the place where Archie was. Arnie. She was trying to be at the place where Arnie was, and she's, like, there maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think so, because he was being possessed and, like, floating in the air and stuff when they showed her still in that underground tunnel thing.
Right.
So, I don't know where she was, and that bothers me.
Where was she?
Like, in every movie nowadays, there's always a guy going, "Where is she?" And I just think of Batman. Okay, so I thought that they didn't really give Ed anything to do, but then I thought about it and I was like, okay, like he's only has two modes. Either he's saving Lorraine from something or he's threatening her. Like, either, with the knife that he's gonna kill her or with the sledgehammer. So, like,
Because he was possessed.
Because he was possessed, yeah. I feel like those are the only two things that he contributed to the story. And, like, he's weak and has had a heart attack or something.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like he didn't do anything. So then, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think
weird.
I think it has to do with like the fact that maybe because of his health issues, like he kind of took a backseat to Lorraine, really, controlling the narrative and all that. But yeah, I think I feel like that might be true. They didn't give him a whole lot to do, but they probably could just say it was because of his health problem.
Yeah.
That happened at the beginning of the movie.
They could have given him like, what was it? The cameraman found that discovery of that thing. Like, I don't know. I feel like he could have done something more with like finding information through his, non-clairvoyant ways.
Yeah,
or
maybe that's how it played out in real life, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Like he was
Gotta
just
give
kind of
credit to the person who actually did it.
Right. I mean, who knows?
Well,
really,
yeah,
because we're just assuming as to playing devil's advocate, I guess, about why the devil made me do it.
The devil made me advocate.
But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, I think he was definitely on the back seat this movie.
I had another thing. It's not really a problem with the movie because it was something that's already been established in the other movies, but I don't understand why they're called the Disciples of the Ram. Because I looked it up. I was like already confused like when I was watching it, and then like I looked it up just to like double make sure that I'm not like missing something, but rams are not associated with like satanic stuff. It's goats. So I don't understand why
they're called that.
Yeah, like especially is it that rams are supposed to be associated with courage and like leadership and bravery, and like that's why they're associated with like Aries and stuff like that. So like seems off.
But is that like a real life cult? Or satanic whatever cult?
I think I looked it up and it said that it was made up for the movie. I could be wrong, but one article that I saw said that was that's not real. So
yeah, it's an interesting choice then, because I thought like maybe that's just the name of one of the satanic cults that were around at the time, and they kind of didn't have a say over that. But I mean, if they did and they chose that, it's kind of a little bit weird. Yeah, I didn't really give that too much thought, but that's a good point.
Yeah, I was like, no, it's a goat. Yeah. Remember, like, what's that movie? The Witch? With Black Phillip.
Yeah.
I liked that goat. He's a nice goat.
I did want to get into the story of the real Arnie Johnson for a little bit. So I found this article on a website called The Radio Times, and I'll put it in the description of the video and the podcast. So basically, I'm going to read you like a little excerpt from the article because I feel like it really breaks down everything that actually happened. So it says, Conjuring 3 is inspired by the trial of 19-year-old Arnie Cheyenne Johnson, who was charged with murdering his landlord, Alan Bono, in February of 1981. During the trial, the defendant gained infamy for becoming the first person to claim a defense of demonic possession in the U.S. court. Although perhaps unsurprisingly, this version of the events was not accepted by the judge. So they didn't believe him, which, I mean, I wouldn't either. Yeah. His defense rested on the testimony given by the family of his fiancée, Debbie Glatzel, who's also obviously a character in the movie. Debbie's 11-year-old brother had reportedly been the subject of a demonic possession, and with his parents, having grown increasingly worried with a number of unexplained ominous events, which they didn't really show because they cut right to the exorcism. I guess they in a flashback they showed.
Yeah.
The waterbed. We didn't even get into the waterbed stuff.
I did not like the waterbed. It looked so unsettling.
Yeah.
Because I think it wasn't an actual waterbed he was laying on. I think it was a CGI'd like the way that it was moving. I mean, maybe waterbeds are that jiggly. I've never been on one.
Me neither.
They
and
look
then
ridiculous.
I was like, who would think that's comfortable? That looks like the most uncomfortable shit ever.
I feel like it would be like sitting on in a partially deflated air mattress. How it like sags and your back hurts.
Yeah, dude, no.
Yeah, I didn't like that waterbed is, and then the arm came out of it. Yeah. And then the oh yeah, there's water damage on the floor, and then you joked and said no, it's demon damage. Yeah. So I wrote that in my notes. I was like, yes.
Damage. So yeah, it says the story really starts in July 1980 when the 11-year-old Glatzel was helping Johnson clean up a Connecticut rental property that he was prepping to move so that he could move in. While there, David claimed to have come across a burnt and black-looking old man who he claims pushed him into a waterbed, saying he would bring them harm if they moved into the house. So that was the waterbed element in the actual story, but it played out a little bit differently, I think.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the witch is not even.
It's not part of the real story.
No, that probably I think that they added her in.
Yeah, to kind of tie things together.
Mm-hmm.
It says when David returned home, he continued to see the old man. He described him as having a white beard, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. David claimed the man's skin was charred as if he'd been burnt.
Mm.
The young boy experienced night terrors and woke up with bruises and scratches on his body. He'd wake screaming and tell his parents he'd seen the sunken features of an old man, like an animal with horns, pointy ears, and jagged teeth. And obviously, like the Conjuring demon doesn't really look like that.
No.
So that's another thing that kind of was different. But yeah, that's kind of like how it played out in the trial, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says, after continued efforts from the Warrens, the Glatzels, and multiple priests, a formal exorcism took place, with witnesses claiming that a demon fled the child's body. Ed Warren claimed Arnie, who was present in the exorcism, shouted, "Take me on, leave my little buddy alone." Which is kind of how it happens in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, David showed signs of improving, but Arnie started to deteriorate. So it talks about like the guy who was like the real Bruno. His name is Alan, who was Debbie's landlord. It says on the day of the murder, Johnson had taken the day off of work and spent the day with Debbie at the kennel, along with some other companions. Debbie, Johnson, and Bono had lunch at a local restaurant and enjoyed a few drinks, becoming drunk in the process. And when they later returned to the kennel, a heated fight broke out, with Bono becoming increasingly agitated.
Mm.
So there was a fight. It wasn't just like, there was a back and forth, which is a little questionable if you think about it, as far as why he would stab the guy. You know what I mean? I feel like it gives more probable cause than the movie presented.
Yeah, it does.
Because they were drunk and they were fighting. So
mm-hmm.
It says, during this argument, Bono seized Debbie's 9-year-old cousin Mary, who had also been present, and refused to let her go, which then led Johnson to confront him and eventually stab him repeatedly with a 5-inch pocket knife, all while growling like an animal. Bono suffered 4 or 5 tremendous wounds, mainly to his chest area. So that's another thing that the movie embellished, because they made a point to say it was 22 stab wounds, because that's how many times the other girl had been stabbed too. So it was like a thing that tied the cases together.
I should have looked up if there's a significance of 22.
There might be. Maybe something like demon shit or something.
Yeah.
It says, Bono died several hours later, and Johnson was later arrested roughly 2 miles away from the murder. The murder is believed to be the first murder in Brookfield, Connecticut's 193-year history, and the first in the 30 years since the town had police records. The next day, Lorraine Warren immediately claimed that it was a case of demonic possession, which naturally led to much media coverage around the world. During the trial, the trial began on the 20th of October, 1981. And Johnson's lawyer, Martin Minella, attempted to enter the plea of not guilty due to demonic possession, stating Johnson was possessed by a demon and it was a demon who actually manipulated his body. It says, Minella, speaking about the case and the fame that followed, said, the courts have dealt with the existence of God, now they're going to have to deal with the existence of the devil. Which is an interesting,
That was, I think they used that quote into the movie.
Okay, I didn't notice that, but...
Yeah, I think Ed said it to the lawyer when she said, like, come on, demons?
Oh, I see.
Come on, dude. And he's like, well, they believe in God, so they should believe in demons and the devil.
Right.
So.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
It says, however, the plea of not guilty due to demonic possession was immediately thrown out by presiding judge Robert Callahan, who said that it would be irrelative and unscientific to allow testimony on those grounds. And so, despite the ensuing media attention, the jury was not legally allowed to consider demonic possession. Mm-hmm. So that really, changes things. And obviously, we don't really get to see anything in the movie about the trial or anything like that, which to me is like a far more interesting story than, I don't know, but it would have been a different kind of movie. It wouldn't have been like horror. It wouldn't have been The Conjuring. It wouldn't have fit into those kind of parameters, but it would have been really interesting. I think, I don't have the name of the movie, but when I was doing research, there are a few other movies about this particular case that I think delve more into like the actual real life stuff that happened. It says, Johnson's defense claimed that he hadn't been the same after Glatzel's exorcism, and witnesses were called upon to say that they saw a demon transfer from Glatzel to Johnson. Debbie Glatzel also testified that Johnson behaved similarly to Glatzel. Ed Warren claimed Johnson had made a fatal mistake by taunting the alleged demon. It says, Debbie claimed Johnson had come to Bono's apartment to repair a stereo for him, but that Bono had been drinking red wine and the pair got into an argument about payment for the repair. She also said that Johnson was in a trance when he stabbed Bono. So that's a thing too, is like, I noticed that was a little bit different than what they mentioned earlier, which was that they were all drinking together because they went out to eat or something and they came back. And now she's saying like he went over to fix the stereo, but Bono was drinking red wine. So I don't know which of the two is true, but that's just what was presented in the article. And I'm sure that, I don't know how reliable this article is, but it seemed to kind of lay out what actually was discussed in the trial. So obviously you can do your own research, but this is what I found. It says, according to reports, in the 3 months Debbie and Johnson lived next to Bono, they had been friends. The police believed that Bono and Debbie's relationship was more than boss and employee, but Debbie denied this despite the police claiming the argument was over her rather than the stereo. So it says, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, does take this angle into the story, exploring the jealous lover plot. So that's another thing that, obviously could be presented in court, like maybe there was some sort of love triangle happening, and that's why he ended up killing Bono. So,
that's confusing. Like, so was the kid there or not? Was he holding the kid? Was it over the money? Was it over the girl?
Yeah.
His girlfriend, his fiance, whatever. The movie does also kind of vaguely like brush over the money aspect of the thing when he's like, hey, for $5 I'll fix my thing, and he's like, make it 15. He's like, oh, I'll give you 10. So I don't know, but that was just kind of very brief.
Yeah. Obviously, like, my whole point with researching the actual story is to point out that obviously this was fiction. They can't really claim that it was a real story. It was kind of loosely based off a real story. Yeah, so obviously what actually happened is way more interesting than what they presented. But, I feel like they had a certain goal in making this movie, and they were presenting everything from like a horror movie perspective. But, this is kind of the reality of things, I guess. So finally, it says that after the jury deliberated for more than 3 days, Johnson was convicted of first-degree manslaughter on the 24th of November, 1981, and he was sentenced to between 10 and 20 years in prison. He was released in 1986, having only served 5 years of his sentence. So I didn't really look too much into what is up with him now because I didn't really see a point. Like, I would imagine that he probably lives a very private life. Him and Debbie did get married, and they probably had kids and all that. But yeah, it was interesting to find out like what actually happened, and how much the movie kind of embellished everything.
I think that it was very ballsy of the production, the studio, whatever you want to say, for them to pick up this movie, just based on the fact that it's has a real life component, and they're like making it so fictionalized, and like it could be be perceived in a lot of different ways, of it like possibly being like disrespectful or not taking accountability, like you said, or like any of that stuff. And then also like how you're saying that it's kind of misleading to people who don't look into the real story of it, and then they're thinking that there's actually like a witch and all this other like junk. Yeah. So yeah, that's very interesting that they decided to go with it, especially since if you look whenever they show Ed and Lorraine's little basement with all that junk in it, they could have easily picked something else of that other junk and like picked one of those to do the story about, if they were gonna like fictionalize it even more.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, it's interesting they chose that one. I guess maybe because they knew it would get a lot of like attention since it had been in the news and stuff like that.
Because from what I read, it was like highly talked about when it was happening, because it was like, ooh, demonic possession as defense. Like, nobody's ever done that before, so yeah, it's interesting. So my final thoughts are that I thought the movie was okay. I thought that it had some issues, but it was overall like a pretty entertaining viewing experience. I feel like those movies kind of always are, even if they're trash in the storyline and all that. I think that I did welcome some of the elements that were like a departure from the traditional formula. I thought that they were good, and they kind of brought something different to the Conjuring series. But I mean, like I mentioned before, like the reality of these movies is that they're like huge blockbusters, and they're gonna keep like churning them out, and that's that. I don't think that anything will be able to replicate the success of the first one, but at the same time, I am glad that that the franchise is able to continue, and we still get to see and talk about and review like horror movies that are like this in our current, So what's your rating?
My rating is a 7.2 out of 10 demonic waterbeds.
I have the same thing.
Wait, what?
Well, I don't have the same rating, but I have the same. I have a possessed waterbed.
Oh.
Yeah, so mine is 8 out of 10.
Oh wow.
Demon or what? Possessed waterbeds. So I was like, I was thinking I almost gave it a lower rating, but I thought I did like it better than The Woman in the Window, so I was like, I can't really give it a 7 or anything like that. It was just it was a horror movie. It was like a blockbustery horror movie. I feel like they all kind of start to they all like kind of start to be the same after a while. With the exception of a few, obviously. But they always, like, for the most part, keep me entertained. So I feel like I can't really rate them too low. So that's it for today's episode. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to like it and make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening on audio, still make sure to subscribe and also leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast Network, because that really helps.
So if you guys have any movie suggestions that you want us to do next, or you have any comments or want to talk with us about what you thought about the movie, go ahead and follow us on Instagram. And then also you could email us, and the email is in the description of the video/audio.
Yes. So make sure to stay in touch with us and let us know what you're thinking. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching and listening.